Chapter 8 The Blythe Girls, Helen, Margie, and Rose by Laura Lee Hope. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 8 Magic. Meanwhile, there were Helen and Rose, still gazing at the dreary prospect outside the windows of the dingy little apartment far up into the 200s, and wondering just what they were going to do now that Margie was gone. "It's a good deal worse for us than it is for her," Rose remarked moodily. "She will have all the excitement and fun of a new place and making money, while we ought to be very thankful for Margie's good fortune," Helen finished gently. "If this Miss Pepper hadn't happened to want a social secretary and chosen Margie—" "To be it," Rose put in. "To be it," laughed Helen. "Things might be a good deal gloomier than they are today, now, I'll tell you." "Sure, we got a good meal out of Miss Pepper anyway," giggled Rose, adding impishly, "I wonder if that lady is as full of pep as her name. If she is, I'd like to meet her, and I don't envy Margie her job." "I wish you wouldn't use that word 'job' so often," said Helen, as she turned from the window and began to tidy the living room. "It sounds so common, somehow." "A rose by any other name would smell as sweet, or words to that effect," retorted Rose, as she picked up her hat and pulled it down over her bright hair. "I'd like to land one, call it what you may. How do I look, Nell?" She turned to pose impishly before her sister. "Do I look like the glittering business success that I feel like, or the terrifical failure I feel more like? Come on now, don't spare my feelings. Tell the truth at all costs." Helen drew her sister to her and kissed her gently. "You look just like your name to me, dear," she said, adding anxiously as she glanced at the steady downpour of rain outside the window, "Must you go out today? After such a rain, tomorrow will most surely be fair." But Rose shook her head firmly. Her pretty mouth was compressed into a straight line of determination. "I am going to get a job, position, in the Losar Martin store today, if it's the last act I perform on this earth. It's just about my last chance, and I can't afford to lose it. Wish me luck, Nell. I shall come home flaming with victory." Then she was off, leaving Helen to stare at the closed door and listen to her retreating footsteps as she sped down the stairs. The eyes of her older sister were wet as she set herself listlessly to the dull routine of housework. "It isn't right for me to stay here doing nothing while they, and the two younger ones at that, go out and make money," she told herself rebelliously as she finished the dusting and knew that her work was practically done for the day. "I could do something. I know I could. Even if I have to give up my art for the time." This last suggestion ended with a sob, and almost defensively she brought forth her sketches and examined them critically. "I could do some new ones, I suppose," she thought. "That might be better than trying to touch up the old ones. I ought to be able to find some good subjects in the parks, if ever I get time to go there." She turned again to the old sketches. "They are really not so bad after all," she reflected. "With a little touching up, they might be good enough to attract a buyer." At the thought, her eyes grew suddenly bright again. If she could find a market for her sketches, even though she were paid very little for them, she would be able to go on with her art studies, pay for them with her own money. Two feverish spots of color began to burn on her cheeks as she got out her watercolors and prepared her easel for work. She was so happily absorbed that lunchtime came and passed without her knowledge. Not until the early twilight of a stormy day cast lengthening shadows into the living room did she pause to wonder at the swift passing of time. "Rose has been away for a dreadfully long time," she told herself, reluctantly putting away her work. "I wonder where the child is. Nothing could have happened." But something had happened. Something that was like an adventure in the Arabian Nights to Rose herself. The more she thought about it, the more impossible it seemed, and yet it had actually happened. After leaving Helen with her gallant prophecy of victory that morning, she had gone straight to the Losar Martin department store. She had avoided that emporium heretofore for the reason that the extreme elegance of its reputation had daunted her. She had gone past it many times, gazing longingly at its gorgeous and luxurious window display, had once almost entered within its magical portals. At the last moments she had fled, and ever since had been busily calling herself names because of that cowardice. There was something about the very magnificence of the place that overawed her, made her conscious of her last year's dress and hat, and the patch on the sole of her shoe. But today it was different. Perhaps it was Margie's example of fearlessness in facing the redoubtable Miss Pepper. Perhaps it was the fact that this seemed to be about her last chance of placing herself with one of the larger department stores. At any rate, be the reason what it may, Rose decided to take her fate in her hands. She looked neither to the right nor to the left in the damp and stifling subway for fear she might see something or hear something that would cause her to change her mind. Once arrived at 42nd Street, she rushed toward the outer air, passing many of her slower and less resolute sisters. Several people looked at her and turned again to stare, wondering what the very pretty girl was in such a tremendous hurry about. Rose gasped as she entered the magnificent portals of the Losar Martin department store, much as an inexpert swimmer takes a long breath before diving into deep and unknown waters. But she never once wavered or turned back. Today it was do or die. Her heart was beating violently when, after meeting with determined opposition by various clerks in the outer office, she finally found herself in the presence of the manager himself. She had been given references by the minister of her church at home and by the president of the rather small and insignificant Bank of Riverdale. The latter had been a friend of her father's, and would gladly have done much more than that for the daughters of John Blythe. Rose clutched those two references with all the zeal of a drowning man who sees his one available log about to pass him by. Mr. Paul Carruthers, bald, bespectacled, and 40, continued to inspect the paper he held in his hand with frowning determination. Rose coughed gently, and he looked up, annoyed. "Well, what do you want?" he snapped. "Who sent you here?" "I did," Rose said promptly. "As to what I want, I'd like $15 a week and a chance to earn it." The face and neck of Paul C. Carruthers became purple. His eyes bulged. He half rose from his seat, then seated himself again, weakly. "He's enraged," thought Rose. "In another moment he'll call all those smirking clerks in the outer office and have me put out. Oh, well, let him do it. I expected it." Mr. Carruthers became still more purple in hue, coughed, stuttered, and chuckled. "Well, if you are not a conceited young person," he exclaimed, and to the girl's incredulous ears he seemed amused. "What makes you think you're worth $15 a week?" "I know I'm worth much more than that," replied Rose, a smile breaking at the corners of her very pretty mouth. "But I'd be willing to start at 15." "This becomes more interesting by the moment," Mr. Carruthers assured her. "Here, take this chair," he added, pushing one toward her. "I am eager to hear just why you think so well of yourself." "I don't think so well of myself, really," answered Rose, becoming suddenly serious and looking at him squarely. "All I want to prove is that I am worth paying real money to do a real job." "Any experience?" asked Mr. Paul Carruthers, suddenly hurried and businesslike again. Now that question was like a red flag to a bull. Rose flamed at the great man as though he had offered her a deadly insult. "No, I haven't had any experience, but I know that I can sell goods as well as anyone else if I only have a chance," she cried. "But you won't believe that, and you won't give me the chance because I haven't had the experience. Experience! How does anyone get it anyhow? I'm sorry I bothered you. Good morning." "Hey, hold on there. What's the idea of going up in the air like that? I didn't say I wouldn't give you a chance, did I? Come back here, you little spitfire, and sit down in that chair and behave yourself." Rose hesitated. She was not accustomed to being talked to in that way, and she was not a bit sure she liked it. But there was a humorous quality in the man's voice that made her do as he said. She came back slowly and sat down, her face flaming, her lips a little tremulous. Paul C. Carruthers sat back in his swivel chair and studied her, fingertips together. "You have pep and personality," he told her at last. "Two attributes that come in handy in just about every business, but most of all, I think, in the business of selling goods behind a counter. Now, I am going to give you a chance to sell goods," he said, leaning forward and looking at her sharply. "If you make good, the sky's the limit. But it will be hard work. I'm going to start you in the millinery trimmings department." "Oh," said Rose faintly. "Thank you." Just then, that was all she could say. End of chapter 8.